this is not going to be a universally popular video because it is a bad news. It's a bad news about West Ham's transfer strategy. Make no mistake about it, despite what some people say, this is much better for us in terms of just enjoyment of doing the whole YouTube thing, or indeed views, to say West Ham are close to signing this player. That's much better. The bad news, particularly on transfers, it kills transfer rumours, is bad. It's a bad thing to do. But I've got to do it, particularly based on yesterday's revelation that West Ham had made a £100,000 a week offer for Angel Gomes, which had been rejected. And it was true, by the way. That is absolutely true. The thing is, it's not new news. That happened in January. There's been no recent bid. There has been recent contact, I'll tell you that now. And the recent contact has been Graham Potter personally phoning up Angel Gomes. That's good news, right? I don't know exactly what was said in the conversation, but it was pretty much football stuff. This is how I want West Ham to play. This is where I see you fitting in. Stuff like that. You can sort of imagine the rest. The reason we're not signing Angel Gomes has got nothing to do with how he would see himself slotting into Graham Potter's ultimate vision for the West Ham midfield. It's got nothing to do with that. It's the fact that we can't conclude a transfer. And it's the fact that our offer is so much less than everybody else's. Now, all I'm going to do is share this information with you. If you can believe it or not believe it, entirely up to you. But it points to a bigger problem. And it's not just about Angel Gomes. It's not just about Jonathan David. They're viewed as almost the same. They're not. One of them we got a chance of signing, Angel Gomes. The other one we don't really. So, one of them is a far higher profile player than the other one. Gomes, we would have a chance of signing if we were able to bid comparable money. But the first impressions we made were not particularly good at all. But this goes back to a couple of months ago, really, and a situation that the club has found itself in terms of an inability to negotiate. Now, there are some uncomfortable truths here, because there's always these myths around transfers. West Ham don't spend money. West Ham don't want to spend money. West Ham spend money like it's going out of fashion. If you believe that, then you must believe that that West Ham are lying in the accounts and that we got all of our players for nothing. West Ham spend money like a drunk sailor. That's what we do. We're just really, really bad at it. So that's a myth, right? There's also some uncomfortable truths, which is a lot of people don't like agents and stuff like that. I'll tell you now, and by the time, if you take on board what I'm saying, you may even come to the same conclusion. It's almost impossible for West Ham to sign players without agents. I don't like, for instance, the over-reliance on Will Salthouse. I'll tell you now, it may well be. I think that's one of the reasons we might get Harwood Bellis, is because he's a Will Salthouse agent. I think because the nuances that are needed to get a transfer deal over the line, we are totally crap at, all right? And that's why we use these agents. It's convenient for us, and we do it, and that's why we probably got the Wan-Bissaka deal over the line. But West Ham do spend money. There's no doubt about it. However, what's happened in the last, let's not say 12 months, what's happened in the last 6 to 8 months is that David Sullivan has stepped away from transfers. He doesn't really have anything to deal with it. So what we've got is we've got Karen Brady doing negotiations, and we hired a third party to deal with the initial Angel Gomes transfer and the second bid for John Duran. We've not done well in any of them. Now, let's just go back to the John Duran one to start with, because the Duran bid, obviously we had a failed bid in the summer. John Duran's agent is also called Jonathan, actually. Jonathan Herrera. It might be Jonathan Herrera. It's something like that. John Duran and his agent Herrera believed that the deal for West Ham was really close. They were so confident. That's why he did that on Instagram, John Duran. He thought it was so close. It was over 3 million. West Ham pulled out. He was furious. John Duran was absolutely furious. And they let it be known. And I think his name's Herrera. You'd have to go and check it out yourselves. But he was so annoyed with what went on that he said he didn't want to do business with West Ham again. Right? So this was already in the first transfer window. And that was when the club were trying to negotiate. Tim Stuyton was still involved in it. Now, that's a bit of an issue because he's got some really good players on his books. Because of that, when we got to January, I'm not sure why we were bidding at all, because they'd already said they didn't want to do business with us. West Ham went in with a £45 million offer in January, which was a result of, which was more, significantly more than the, whatever it was, the £36 million failed bid that we'd done in the summer. What was weird was that Aston Villa 2 days before had already turned down a €70 million bid from PSG, from John Duran, and it was already very, very common knowledge that the Saudi club were going to come in with even more. So Aston Villa, everyone knew Aston Villa had €75 million bid on the table and had rejected a £70 million bid. Yet West Ham still went in for a £45 million bid. Why would they do it? And this is to people that we'd already pissed off, basically. And, well, clearly that didn't get done. We then had the Banzuzi debacle, and it was Karen Brady, apparently. Again, this is all just from my sources. Choose to believe it, choose to disbelieve it. It's entirely up to you. And that was that Karen Brady had gone to the Belgian club, where so Banzuzi is a very talented, I think he might be 21 now. He was at the time 20-year-old, talented Dutch under-21 player, energetic midfielder. He was probably the type of player that the West Ham midfield needed. Apparently, Brady held negotiations and said, this is our first and our final offer. I reported all of this at the time. If you want to go back and search the channel, you can go and find this stuff on there. The Belgian club turned around and went, well, first and final, that's no negotiation. They turned away. It was almost like she'd gone in there in apprentice mode, you know, like a caricature, like she I don't know, like the sort of negotiations you might expect from on The Apprentice with Alan Sugar or something like that. They turned around and said, no, the deal wasn't done. So by this point, West Ham are starting to get a reputation. We then entered the bidding for Angel Gomes, and the Gomes deal, we just offered far less than anybody else. Far less. Now, here's where it gets really, really interesting, because having spoken to somebody today, it appears that West Ham, basically they said, well, West Ham are prepared to pay people like Guido Rodriguez more money than they're offering for Angel Gomes. That's a concern. So there is a scattergun approach. Even Carlos Soler is on £235,000 a week at Paris Saint-Germain. We're paying $100,000 of it. We're not willing to give Angel Gomes more than we're currently paying Carlos Soler. Now, what has been said is that Angel Gomes is a free agent. He is going to move. I've been told he is moving to the Premier League. He's had 2 Bundesliga offers. They've both been rejected. He's moving to the Premier League because he'd spoken to Thomas Tuchel, and Tuchel had said, look, aside from some very, very rare circumstances, which I guess Jude Bellingham, Harry Kane, I believe Jordan Henderson because of experience, I don't know. In the main, he wants players playing in the Premier League where he can watch them. Angel Gomes has listened to that. He's had a phone call with Tuchel, apparently, and so he's going to move to the Premier League. West Ham are at the very bottom of the list, not because of any great big conspiracy, but because we've offered less. As I say, Graham Potter has phoned the player. It's not a footballing thing in particular. I think Graham Potter's probably sold the concept that he wants to improve the way West Ham control the ball in the middle of the pitch, and Angel Gomes is quite the guy to do that. It's money. Because here's the thing, he's probably worth 30-odd million quid, something like that. So the general consensus is, in football, is that you offer somebody that is on a free transfer, you give them more wages and you give them a bigger signing-on fee. That way you've saved yourself some money. You don't get them for free. There's some payback for both parties. I don't know. Maybe you give him $150,000 a week, and you give him whatever. I don't know. A big signing-on bonus. And what you've done is you've not saved yourself 30 million. You've probably saved yourself 15 million. You split the difference. That's generally how it works. We don't seem to be doing that. And because of that, other teams in the Premier League have just completely outbid us. Teams that ordinarily shouldn't be outbidding us, they are. That's why this deal is not getting done. It's money. And if anyone's surprised by that, this is why players run their contracts down, for money. And we're just not prepared to pay it, which is weird because we will hemorrhage money in other areas. West Ham's biggest problem at the moment is actually that we don't have a negotiator. West Ham were bidding for both Jonathan David and for Angel Gomes, and funny enough for Banzuzi, before Graham Potter arrived. I don't know if Potter wanted Banzuzi or not. I don't know. I definitely know that when he came into West Ham, he said, is there any way we can get Angel Gomes? Is there any way that we can get Jonathan David? He's basically instructed the club to try and get those players. And I would expect him to do that, rightly so. I don't know if he knew at the time that we'd actually already tried. As I've mentioned in videos before, we got offered Jonathan Davids 12, 18 months ago for £20 million. I don't know if Potter knew that we'd already tried and failed to get Gomes, but there was a renewed effort. So you can understand Potter coming in and being all enthusiastic about it. Okay, we're going to go and get this guy. We're going to go and get this guy. West Ham are serious. It's one thing instructing the club to go and get a player. It's quite another whether the club are competent enough to get the deal done. And I think there's a confusion between the two, and I think that's why some people have got... And I get a certain level of pushback any time I say it's unlikely that we're going to sign Gomes, because that's just what I'm being told. And I understand why, because people want us to sign a player. People want it to be true. But that's not enough. And the truth of the matter is we don't have negotiators. We don't have any people at the club who are meant to be doing it. We shouldn't really be appointing third-party negotiators to do the deal. There are always agents involved who oil the wheels. We shouldn't also be relying on agents to get deals done. All that does is highlight quite how bad we are at doing it. And we've already demonstrated when left to our own devices, we're really, really bad at this stuff. Steiten was negotiating. Steiten's not a negotiator, but he did get the deal done. There was certainly a tendency, and he got a reputation for overpaying at West Ham, which didn't help his job prospects. There's more to it than that. You know the story with Tim Steiten and Moyes and Lopetegui and Kretinsky putting him in there. It's a complex story, Tim Steiten, but one of the accusations was he overpaid. That being said, he was learning on the job. He'd never done negotiating before. Certainly hadn't done it at Werder Bremen. Certainly hadn't done it at Leverkusen. And he was asked to do it at West Ham. But he did get the deals done, whether you think we overpaid or whether we didn't. So we did lose a negotiator. An experienced one, no, but we did lose a negotiator. That was never better demonstrated that Steiten was learning on the job than when he went over to Denmark to try and get Ibrahim Osman, and he negotiated with the wrong agent. He was actually negotiating with the player's former agent, and he was instructed by... But it's actually the Danish FA, but instructed and said that you're dealing with the wrong guy. Actually, the original agent was still in, was I believe, had actually some legal cases pending. There was a dispute over who was Ibrahim Osman's representation. He went and negotiated with the wrong guy, all right? It didn't make him look good, but that's what you're going to get when someone's learning on the job. But we did have a negotiator. You also got to factor in, as I say, that David Sullivan has stepped back. He's not doing this stuff anymore. He's stepped back from it. And as popular or as unpopular as that might be, that's the truth. He's got other fish to fry at the moment. He is not dealing with that stuff. So why Karen Brady has got involved. That's why a third party was appointed. So then you get to the situation where you've got Graham Potter coming in, and Graham Potter brings in Carl McCauley with him. Carl McCauley was a data analyst at Brighton. This stuff sounds boring, but it's important. It's important that you understand the structure and you understand the job that he did. Paul Winstanley was the main scout. Dan Ashton was the director of football. Dan Ashton did the negotiating with, what's his name, Barber? Oh, I think that's his name, the chairman. There's somebody else there. The chief exec was involved. It was quite a complex but successful negotiating team. Potter took, and you can check this out, go and look on the website, you can search this up on Google. Potter took Carl McCauley with him to Chelsea. If you go and look, you'll see it there. It's on the Chelsea website. Head of data analysis. That was what he was. That was what McCauley was, head of data analysis. He's come to West Ham and he's been appointed head of recruitment. That's his first time doing it. He is not. Now, I hear he's a very impressive guy. Let me say this about Carl McCauley. I've heard he's very impressive, right? But he's not a negotiator and he's not been brought in to do it. So actually, very recently when West Ham rejected the idea that we might appoint Dan Ashworth, he's actually exactly the person we need. It's not really a video about us appointing him. There's a system in transfers, and we've got this. There's a stepping stone that it takes to make a transfer, and we don't have one of them. And I guess we haven't fully had a proper one for quite some time. Maybe since Huselos. Maybe since then. We haven't had a proper one that would do that. And that's why agents step in and complete the deals for us. But at the moment, there's a lot of them there whereby, as I say, we can go and get someone from Will Salthouse if it's a Will Salthouse client. That's easy enough. He's got a relationship, Will Salthouse, with the Sullivans. So they can get a deal done easily. We start to hit a stumbling block when it's not one of his clients. We're particularly at a stumbling block when we're going to start alienating people by making derisory offers. And that's exactly what's happened with John Duran's agent. And it's exactly what is happening with Angel Gomes. You hear the same thing repeated back from two different people. Incompetent, botched effort, laughing. So people are not respecting what West Ham are doing in the transfer market at the moment. And for that reason, we need to step it up. Now, I don't know from this point on if we're improving that. I don't know if that's been identified. And I feel sorry for Potter because he has obviously come in with a certain level of enthusiasm. At Brighton, he had this well-oiled machine behind him. And I know at Chelsea, he said in his video that he felt he'd just been planted there and he was all alone. Whilst that is true, when Todd Bowley was over in America, had phone calls to America, Chelsea have quite an established process of buying and selling players that operates completely independently of the manager. Well, it has to, the head coach. It has to, because they swap the head coach in and out so frequently. Graham Potter never had to worry about players at Chelsea. I know he wasn't there for long. In fact, they had too many players. He said that. They had too many players. He is currently, this is the first time he would have ever experienced this, I would imagine. I would imagine. I couldn't tell you anything about Ostersons. I couldn't tell you anything about Swansea. But certainly Chelsea, certainly Brighton, certainly top-level football. It's the first time he's probably experienced this. So he wouldn't know. In many respects, a certain level of naivety. Why would he not think that he could bring his mate, McCauley, in with him to identify the talent? For him to look and say, look, these are the 5 most progressive young midfielders in Europe. These are whatever you want. If he wants a wing-back system, these are the 5 wing-backs in South America who best suit the system that Graham Potter wants. He can do all of that. And it may have been naive, but I would defend that naivety, that he would be able to walk into a club and say, well, these are the lists that I've got, and then expect the club to be able to go and get those deals over the line. That this is the problem he's going to have. I don't know if he's realised it yet. I would imagine during his conversation with Gomes, that was probably said to him. That you can discuss Angel's role within the framework of a midfield all you want. But if you're not going to beat the deal put on the table by Fulham, to use one example, then, the same phrase was used to me again today, a million miles away, bottom of the list. Bottom of the list, million miles away. Some of this is going to be negotiations, right? Obviously. But as I understand it, West Ham are not in negotiations at the moment. There's not anybody, and here's the most damning thing. that I heard today, not at any point have West Ham or their representatives asked Gomes' representatives what it would take to get the player. We've apparently not asked, okay, you've rejected that, what do you want? What would it take? I mean, I find that unbelievable. I really, really do. And I'd like to say I hope to be wrong, and I hope to be corrected on this. Not verbally, but by the proof that we sign the player. By the time that we get to to the summer, and we start signing players. Because that's the only way my concerns are going to be alleviated. Because somebody at the club is going to need to step forward, or somebody is going to need to be appointed to do these negotiations. Because at the moment, it's either Karen Brady, third-party representation, or agents who are going to do it. There is nobody there. There's no chief executive who's going to step in and do that stuff. And as I say, listen, Brady has got no experience of doing this stuff, really. You've got to you've got to have some back and forth. Negotiations are negotiations. They're not a situation where anybody can walk in and say, this is it, that's the bottom line. Football's big. There's a lot of clubs. There's fierce competition for players. And you're going to have to oil the wheels. You're going to have to make relationships with people. You're going to have to do stuff that maybe ordinarily you wouldn't want to do, but that's the kind of stuff that's going to enable you to get the advantage over that other club that want the same player that you do. West Ham are not doing this, apparently. And I'm sorry it's a very miserable video, and I'll probably leave the comments alone on this one because I don't want to get fired back a lot. So yeah, I'm gonna disappear into me down my rabbit hole again now. I will be back tomorrow with a separate video about something else, about hopefully something a little bit more positive. I do think it's good that there are some positives here, that Graham Potter is getting involved. Maybe it will take Graham Potter to push the club forward. Maybe it will take Potter to turn around and say, what is going on here? Why can't we do this? Because if he makes a second call, here's the odd thing. Maybe he then goes back and instructs the club, okay, we need to go back with another offer, or we need to do something like that. And if he makes another call to Gomes' team and finds out that another offer hasn't been made, maybe he turns around, he might then realise, oh my goodness, what have I got myself into? Apparently West Ham are identifying a lot of players at the moment. Apparently McCall is another positive. McCall is doing his bit. He's identifying players and they're looking at players, and that's a really good thing. That's a really positive step. But we're missing a link in the chain. Who's that person that's going to go and get those deals over the line once the list has been handed over? This is really, really, really difficult. The worst parts of the story I can't even share with you, unfortunately. That's the truth. That's the truth of the matter. Yeah, it's not particularly healthy. West Ham need to really, really pull their socks up. And all I can say is I hope that they're doing so. I was a little bit buoyed yesterday when I heard the news. It was Jacob Steinberg who reported. I mean, it wasn't great news. Reported that West Ham are losing faith that they can get the Gomes deal over the line. I've been telling you, if you watch this channel regularly, I've been telling you this for a long, long time. I say long, long time. End of December, right? But I was a little bit buoyed by the fact that maybe we'd gone back in with another offer. I got told today, no, that's old news. There's been no recent offer. So I'm not sure how much we've tried to get this guy since Potter's come in. My reading of the situation is Potter's come in and said, can you get me those? And there's been, maybe the club said, oh yeah, we'll do that. And they either haven't done it or they just don't know how. There's just not the necessary representation within the club to go and get the job done. You need experts, don't you, in football? You need experts in scouting. You need experts on the football pitch. The players themselves are experts. This is what you need, right? You need your coach. He's got to be a tactician. He's got to be an expert. But you're going to need an expert in... I mean, it's a bit old school now. David Dean would be the example I would use at Arsenal. That was the guy. It was Peter Hill-Wood that owned the club. This is before Kroenke had it and all the rest of it. Peter Hill-Wood was the chairman. The chief exec was David Dean. He was the guy. He was the guy. He was the guy that did all the negotiating. We don't have that. We don't have one of those. And I think that's a rarity because most other clubs do.